Yeah, so the last time we were together, we were talking. It went right over into relationship, marriage, and I know I was talking about. I think one of the questions were, would I have married my husband?
Well, no, that wasn't actually what we are.
Wow.
Hey,
Don't try and get us in. If that's how you interpreted it.
I know, something along the lines of what would
We're
I
not here to
change?
break
Yeah,
up their
what your- it
marriages.
was-
What would I
Wasn't that?
change?
That wasn't that. That's not what we said.
Is that
But
what you took from it?
Okay, what would I?
Is that
Of
what you
change.
meditated
Is
on?
there anything you'd have changed in your
Yeah.
past?
Yeah.
So, in terms of
We
anything
said
you
like
would've done?
hindsight was more. That's how I interpreted
Yes.
Not your whole
Yeah.
structure.
49 years of evaluation.
no.
Never.
Yeah.
But, it's such a big thing today. People want relationships.
Yes.
People want to, and you see girls today, you see them posting on Instagram, social media, the whole engagement thing, and just breaking down in tears and the whole drama. And I think as women, it's like this fairy tale
Yeah.
that we all have, and we've had probably since, the majority of women, I would say, have this fairy tale of one day, this guy placing this big rock on her finger and asking her to be the one. And, obviously that makes you feel special as someone's chosen you. But, people don't really weigh up.
That's
What's
not
that
marriage.
actually going to look like?
That's not marriage at all.
That's not marriage.
Yeah.
It's not in the ring. It's not in that moment. It's not in the dress. And most people, that's what they fixate on, and they don't think about, how's this going to play out now?
Well, I know Dominic never brought anyone home until Khadijah. So, was she the first girl that you ever thought about marrying, or was she like a second, third?
No, I was
Careful how you answer.
no, definitely the first. Because I remember there was a shift in my mindset that year, maybe about a month or two before. I think I said this before, maybe on the last episode, but it's like we went to Croatia with like my friends and stuff, and I was just bored of that whole life. You know what I
Then
mean?
obviously, not to
So
like
that
throw
whole
you under
single
the
life,
bus,
single
but
guy thing.
you were very popular. Let's put it that way. So what made it Khadijah? Like, because I get it. Like, you were bored or whatever, but like it could have been Luisha, like that you met. Like, what? There must have been something that made you also about her particularly, where you were like,
Yeah.
this is where I'm
There was
stopping.
I think when my mindset did shift, there are certain elements that I was looking for in terms of if I'm going to be serious with someone, they have to have certain characteristics and their background and their family and stuff.
Every girl's like, give us the list.
No, but it's like, there's certain things you just know. Depending on how you grow up, you see certain things and aspects that you see in your mother or your sisters or the females around you, qualities that you like and you want. Maybe it's subconsciously, but it's things that you pick up that you want in your household or your family, or how she is with kids and how she is, Some women, they might seem like, oh, gorgeous and all that. They know how to cook. Any kids around her, she's like anti-kids, and that could be a big
Yeah.
I
red flag
remember
for some
you
people.
saying to me, one of the things I know that was major to you, I don't know if you remember this, one of the first things that Dominic did actually was he came home and he'd never done this before. He gave me his phone.
showed you a
like
picture
with a picture on it, and he's like, I met somebody, and we knew immediately that this is serious because he'd never done that before.
Yeah.
But he said to me, she's like us, Mum. She comes from, so for Dominic, one of the things was her parents were still together, and she came from a home. Her home life was something that was similar to what he was used to, and so that I believe that was one of the major things. You remember telling me that?
Yeah, and even the process of even you meeting her parents, it was like, because it's like such a similar sort of raising the same, like the cultures are quite similar. It's like the respect and how you deal with people, and everyone just sort of got along in a sense straight away. So we was eager to make sure you guys had a relationship in the sense of you're familiar with each other beforehand.
And that was for me as a parent, that was really an incredible thing, because we didn't orchestrate that. He just, him and Khadijah arranged dinner And those are, I'm saying that to say these are great signs to look for that consideration where some couples get together and the families don't know nothing. That relationship's very hidden, it's very kept secret, but it was just so open and, within no time at all, way before we got to the wedding. Whereas a lot of couples, a lot of families meet each other for the first time at the wedding, but they actually put together a dinner and invited the families. So we met and we were building a relationship way before we got to even an engagement. By the engagement,
that was like 4 months of dating, I think. After 4 months, and
I think as well, like being from a similar upbringing makes a massive
cultures
difference.
can make it hard as well.
I know even for myself and Jason, like I think that's been the most challenging thing in our marriage. Like we've got a very different version of family. We've got a very different version of like morals,
and that's gonna play out.
Yeah, it does, because just even like, when you say the word woman, when you say the word man, when you say the word wife, when you say the word husband, depending on where you're coming from. And I'd say to anybody that, I think that's a really important, I don't think that's something that I necessarily thought was as important as it was, because a lot of people feel like you build your own story, but actually I think that background and culture plays a massive role.
It does.
In what that looks like, because then whether you realize it or not, subconsciously or not, there is an expectation there, because especially if you come from a very close-knit family where there's very defined roles. And I think that when you come from a family where there is a mum and there is a dad, there is a structure that you get very used to where you don't even realize it. I think that there's this psyche that you develop that you're not even conscious of, and you don't really realize it till you get married and you have to start again and you have to do it. And I know for my husband, it's been us having to really meet in the middle, because there's some things that I'm not willing to back down on, because this is how I was raised. This is what I want my kids to know. And I think that that's really underrated, I think, in conversations. Like we talk about finances, we talk about, is he a good person or is she a good person or whatever. But I think that the background is something that we don't put enough emphasis
oftentimes
on.
We've talked about culture before, and most people think culture is as in country or, race. But it's not. It's every home has a culture. And that's what most people don't realize. So for me, when we met, we had similar cultures. We both grew up where parents were present, very involved, very hands-on. Both of us came from where our parents owned their own properties, so we didn't know what it was to be in that a council or whatever environment. But there were still within the culture differences.
Yes, definitely.
Huge differences. So his culture was, his mum was a stay-at-home mum. My mum was a working mum. So his mum would be, his dad would come home from work, get served his meal on a tray in front of the TV in his favourite chair. And when he'd finished eating, she'd go and remove the tray, and he wouldn't move. He would just sit there and roll up his cigarettes and have a smoke. My parents didn't smoke, but my dad was different. He was hands-on. He would help cook. And my dad, we ate together. So my dad didn't eat by himself around the table. My dad, it was the whole family. We waited for him. So when he came home, we ate together. And so when we now get together, he's coming with that and I'm coming with this, and sparks flew even over that. You wouldn't think that would become a deal, but it was like, I was like, you want me to do what?
I think it's like, I think it honestly, it plays such a role. Like even like leaving the house, like there'll be so many times where Jason's like I see it on the ring alarm, like
he's
you're
gone.
I'm like,
Hi.
Well, actually,
like,
I
I
tell
literally
them.
call in. I'm like,
No, but actually
he's like,
today
"You know
coming
that I'm
here,
going."
I didn't actually go and say bye properly. What was your dad doing? Standing at the door
Like,
looking
what are
like
you
lost.
doing?
It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, why you? Because for me, like the way I was raised, like you don't leave the house. Like
No,
if you
Yeah.
can't physically see them and literally like, I'm going now,
Yeah.
you know,
It's
or
not
you
fun,
shout
yeah.
and you shout until someone goes, yep.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
still do it now.
Yeah.
Like I don't even live at home anymore. But if I'm at my mum and dad's, if I'm leaving, I'm like, I'm going, I'm
Yeah.
going. you know,
Yeah.
until someone says.
But my experience was different. So I didn't grow up in a home where I had both my parents. So
Yeah.
I grew up, you know, although my mum, and I didn't grow up in a married home.
Okay.
So both my mum and my stepdad were in a relationship for a long time, but they weren't married. And so I think that even when I was looking, or you know, started dating and was, you know, heading towards marriage, I did look at his family, and he had grown up in a 2-parent family. They were still married, much the same as what you said, you know,
Yeah.
very, you know, very much together. But there was still, if I think back in hindsight, there was still a lot of fragmented behaviors within the household.
Yeah.
But you just see, oh my gosh, you know, your parents are still together. You know, that was
Yeah.
something that I looked for,
Yeah.
because I was just like, you know what, I don't have that. I don't
Yeah,
have that
interesting, yeah.
example. I don't have that experience.
Yeah.
So I just thought, oh, you know, parents are together and siblings and so on. But actually, when I looked beneath the surface, the family was still fractured.
Yeah.
And I didn't take enough stock of that and look at, you know, how does he respond to his parents? How does he respond to his siblings?
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of that kind of would have given me an indication as to what potentially
So
I could
what
have
d-
experienced within family.
So what did you see that now you look back and in
give
how
us
he
a bit
responds?
of a background as
Yeah.
well.
So,
like
I mean,
your
his parents are
story, 'cause you-
pastors.
Yeah.
So, you know, so he had his 2 parents, they grew up together. You know, I met them. They were lovely people, always, you know, always engaging with me, inviting, you know, took me in as one of their own children. Do you know what I mean? But what I did recognize is that he had a very negative relationship with his father.
Okay.
So there was a lot of unforgiveness there. There was a lot of anger, and we're talking about things that he had experienced as, you know, maybe a young child. His father was quite harsh, a disciplinarian kind of
Okay.
parent, but the level of anger that was in him towards his father,
You
it was,
and you saw that.
and I saw
Yeah.
that.
How
but I
did
don't
How
know-
did it manifest?
It would be like, you know, his dad might give advice. So, you know, it was almost like, I don't want to hear nothing from that
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
You know, what does he know? And da. And a lot of things kept spilling out. And I, you know, and at some stages I'll be like, well, hold on a minute. Like, your dad hasn't said anything wrong, you know, this, you know, all the stuff that you're holding on to, you know, it happened a long time ago. You know, he did what he knew to
Yeah.
do. He didn't
But
have a different
But
example.
don't we as women tend to be like,
Like,
oh,
pacify, it's
baby,
okay,
yeah,
it's okay,
you know,
doesn't
I've got you
matter.
now.
But, you know, but then in
You
that,
wanna patch
then
those
he'd be
wounds, yeah.
angry because I've then almost sided with,
Okay.
you know, the issue, the person he saw as the issue. And I think that for me, I didn't take enough stock of that. And it's those little things that you see, the unforgiveness, the
Later down the
anger,
line,
those kind of things that will flare up because they're not directed at you.
Yeah.
You don't hold it as actually that's
Like-
a
like a
red
big
flag. That's
issue.
a worry.
Yeah.
There, it's an issue. It's an unresolved issue that really, before you take any further steps, he needs to deal with that, because the reality is you see that unfold
Yeah.
once
Well,
you've
I
crossed
think
the line. Do you know?
we've spoken a little bit in previous episodes about red flags, but I know for you, you know, obviously you just share what you feel comfortable, but I know for you, you went through a lot
Yeah,
in your
absolutely.
marriage, and you're divorced now, and you're raising, is it 3, 4?
Well, one's an adult.
Yeah, but
One's almost an
yeah,
adult, actually.
but you're doing a great job. You know, powerhouse single mom. But because I think for a lot of people, we really struggle with red flags when it comes to relationships or marriage, because how do you know what is just an area of opportunity versus run? You
Yeah.
know, so do you remember those, or
Oh,
is there
yeah.
anything that really stood out to you, as
Definitely.
in like, oh, how did I miss that?
I don't think there's anything. I think hindsight is a wonderful thing, but actually, you know, go through a lot of pain and hurt. You know, doesn't, you know, hindsight. Yeah, I'd rather have not.
Yeah.
I think part of the issue that I had was not dealing with my own self in the first place. So I came quite broken. I had lots of negative situations in my life, and I think that it almost came as though you're wanting to. One of the things I was thinking about when I was preparing for Saturday was that I came as a single mum. So when we met, I was already a single mum. My daughter was around 5-6 years old at the time.
Yeah.
We came to church after a period. Maybe we had our son by that time, and he was about 2.
Yeah.
I'd never felt. I mean, nobody in church ever made me feel, less than or anything like that. But in myself, I felt, I wasn't. A wife would make me honourable, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, you're just like, okay, he's in church, I'm in church, let's do the right thing. I didn't want to be with somebody else and start another family and start another process and then have something else.
Have another baby dad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I wanted to be the situation where he was in church and now you're serving, and, he looked like he was doing all the right things.
Yeah.
That would make him a good husband. And I think that, you have to really, really, I know that had I really looked at the red flags, was he husband material at that time? He may have grown into it, but at that time, no.
I think one of the red flags that as well that we often, because sometimes we're just looking at that other
person.
individual, but something you said, that you were broken yourself. And I think from that perspective, my judgment's going to be off.
100%.
And that's what, because we can look and look and look and tick all the boxes. But if I'm not coming in to the relationship as whole as possible, then I'm still bringing the negative in, and we're never going to be able to make the right assumptions and the right judgment if we are broken within ourselves, because there's that saying, hurt people hurt people. So I think it's not just looking at relationships and looking at, I've met this incredible person. What about you?
Yeah, definitely. And I
Can't
think
ignore that.
I think that's one of the things. You're looking through the wrong lens because you're looking through a lens of brokenness, and then you think, well,
It's
I
like
can't
having
really
your
judge that
glasses and
person.
your glasses are shattered,
exactly.
right?
I can't really judge that person because me myself, I've got these challenges that that are unresolved, or these experiences that I've had.
But then just to stop you there, because we've got Dominic who had never been married, right? And then we've got your ex-husband who'd never been married, and you said that, was he ready to be a husband then? No. Did he maybe grow into it later? Maybe. Dom, just to get you to weigh in on that, because most men obviously aren't ready till they're ready.
Yeah. 100%.
So how do we, I guess I'm trying to get to the point of how do we identify the kind of potential versus he's never going to be ready? Does that make sense?
I think it's the willingness to change.
100.
I think, because even when I got married, I don't think where I am now, I would have much preferred to have been where I am now when I got married than the way I was. I might have thought I was ready to get married, but there's so many things that I still had to change throughout living with Deesh, and learning, seeing things about yourself that you might not have seen before, or just from someone else being like, look, this needs to change or whatever, and being able to be transparent with things, and being able to I think where I was, not because I was the youngest, so I didn't really have you guys always had someone to talk to and things like that, so I was always naturally an introvert, so I always held things in and always just tried to deal with things within myself. And as I speak to guys now as well, around me, a lot of guys are going through the same things, but they just deal with it internally as well. But it's a thing where you have to learn to be transparent to someone that should be your wife. It should be someone that you at least empty whatever issues are going through. Otherwise, you drive yourself mad, and it's a continuous cycle. So I think learning to be transparent in the marriage, and being able to, as the more kids you have as well, learning there's more slack you have to pick up, and there's things you have to step. It's always a evolving process. It's never okay, I'm the husband I need to be now. It's always the more you have to do, the kids, and you still have to find time for your partner. It's a growing process, I think, but it's that willingness to
So do
adapt.
you feel like that resonates with you? Was there, in your opinion, an unwillingness
To change.
to change?
Definitely. And I think, we sought counsel. We sought counsel from our pastors. you know, people we held in high esteem who we knew had good marriages, you know, who would speak into our lives and try to bring about that change. But there was an unwillingness or an inability, because sometimes, you know, some people at that point in time just do not have the ability to be able to take on board what is being given. It just feels too big for them to make the changes. But whatever it was, you know, it almost felt like we grew, the chasm between us just kept growing and growing and growing, because I'm striving and I'm, you know, picking up the slack, and, you know, I'm taking on a role that is not mine to take on.
Yeah.
But
You're
if I don't
adapting.
take it on, things are going to fall
doesn't
apart.
gonna
Exactly. So
happen,
you
yeah.
adapt-
It's
have
not
to
going to
adapt,
happen.
yeah.
Things are going to fall apart. My family's going to be an absolute mess. And so I'm being mother, I'm being father, I'm being husband, I'm being wife,
Yeah.
you know, just with everything, just trying to hold everything together because
That's a
of
lot of
the
stress.
unwillingness.
That's a lot of stress.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The
That's
unwillingness
literally
to
is
change.
putting this pressure on the marriage, and especially, and I think a lot of people don't realize that when a marriage is, it reminds me of, you know, like a tightrope,
Yeah.
and it's not strong enough yet in the early stages for a lot of pressure, and when we don't realize what we're taking in there, and you find that so many people break at that
Yeah.
point because
Too much
the
pressure.
weight
It's
is too much.
It's too much. It is too
Yeah.
much weight, and you're just carrying, you're juggling, and then resentment comes because you have picked up the.
Yeah.
It's almost like, well, you're stepping into my shoes. When I'm like, well, you haven't stepped into your
Yeah.
shoes,
Yeah.
and
Because
it's
we
hard.
don't- because
You
we
know,
have
we
to.
do it because we have
Yeah.
to. I don't want to be the husband. I, you know, I very much, you know, although, you know, my mum was very young when she had me. She was 16, so I was raised by my grandmother. So very much my grandmother's values, I hold them, which are old school values, which is
Yeah.
like, you know, the husband be the husband,
Yeah.
the wife be the wife. Yes, I will take care of home. I'll take care of everything I need to take care of. You need to play your position. And so I saw that played out with my grandparents, but, you know, in our house, it was almost like I ended up playing the positions. Then I was resented for playing the
Yeah.
position,
Because you're taking
you know,
over,
because you're
being
taking
Stepping on
over,
toes,
and I'm
being
not. I don't
controlling.
want to be domineering, and
Yeah.
I absolutely
Yeah.
and you know, and I said that many times.
But that's
Like,
crazy,
if I was
like-
in control of this marriage,
Yeah.
it wouldn't look
It
like
wouldn't be-
this.
yeah.
Yeah.
If I
Of
was
course, yeah.
dominating
If I
and
was
if
dominating
controlling, I
this
would control
marriage,
you.
our marriage absolutely would
know?
not look like
Yeah,
this. And I
yeah.
said that multiple times. You know, you just trying to take no,
But
because if
then-
it was
then
my
do
way,
something.
It's
do
like-
something.
I think it's the idea of his role being taken, but it's
But
might
you don't
seem
want to take the role.
demasculating at the
Yeah,
time. But
100%.
the benefit of what you went through is that prepared you to be able to, you know, step out and be like, you know what,
I'm doing it
you've
anyway.
learned
gonna
all
do
the abilities that you need to be able to handle everything by yourself.
Yeah. You know, and nobody wants to, especially
Yeah,
in a
of
marriage.
course.
That's a very, very lonely place to be in
Yeah,
when you're in a marriage and you feel like you're just doing everything
and you have dependence
on your
as well.
own, and
yeah.
you're, you know, you've got your kids, you've got a daughter who's looking at you like, what's
yeah,
all
you
this
don't, you don't
then?
want to show
Do you know
that
what I
as
mean?
well.
You
yeah.
want to show, you want to
Yeah.
demonstrate a godly marriage, but
yeah.
everybody could see the cracks.
Yeah.
Like the cracks are just growing and
They're
growing
visible,
and
yeah.
growing. The boys are growing up and they see their dad, you know, annoyed at the slightest thing, or, you know, silent treatment for the whole house. Like, you know, it's an uncomfortable
that's not what
environment
home's
for
supposed to
all
be.
of the children to be in. And I think, you know, again, going back to beforehand, I think one of the things that I would say is that don't fall in love with potential. Now, I say that to say in the sense that everybody's got potential in them,
Yeah.
but you
I-
have
I
to see
like that. I
some
mean,
of
you
the,
need to
you
say
have to
that
see
one more
some of the
time. Don't
proof.
fall in love
Do
with
not fall in love
potential.
with potential,
Wow.
because my ex-husband had a lot of potential. You could see he had the ability. There were certain things that he would do, right? Like, yeah, that's nice. It's not like I never saw anything good about him.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? But when it came to taking the final push and the final, you want to see some testing before you
Yeah.
cross over
Yeah.
into marriage. You
Yeah.
want to see the fruit of what comes out of them when things become difficult, and you need to
Yeah.
pay attention
Of course.
to what comes.
Yeah.
As hard as it may be, in the place where you just don't want to, you know, acknowledge that, and this person has my heart. But the reality is, the heartbreak that comes after, if you don't
It'd be
pay
amplified.
attention,
Oh.
Yeah.
is amplified beyond
Yeah,
what
of
you can
course.
imagine.
Can I ask you that? Because I have a friend who's now divorced, and she remembers her wedding day, and she had this feeling like this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. And she said that, you know, people put it down when she expressed it to a few people, and they were like, you know, it's just wedding jitters. And we hear that all the time. Wedding jitters, you know, you're just nervous or whatever. But obviously now looking back, she knows that it just wasn't the right person. And I think she's remarried now or whatever. But did you, because I know you said you wanted to get married, you wanted to be that honourable woman, and you wanted to have the fairy tale, you wanted to have the full picture, maybe what you didn't get to have growing up. But looking back now, did you know on your wedding day that this wasn't the right person? And did you override it, do you feel?
I don't even think, I think before I got to my wedding day, you know, there were lots of things that said it wasn't the right thing to do.
Pass go.
Do not pass go. And I remember, I actually distinctly remember that when we was in Oakington, I think we had a women's conference, and Pastor, you were praying for some women at the front, and you gave me a word, and you know, it's one of my biggest regrets that I didn't really pay attention.
What did I say?
Because you said to me, you know, if you help a butterfly out of its cocoon, it will never develop into what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Wow.
And in that moment, I knew exactly what he was talking about, because already I had started to try and
Get him out the
Rip
cocoon.
open the cocoon.
like just come on, just sort yourself out, just do the stuff, like you know. I knew already, and this was probably about 2 months before we were getting married, and I was just like, okay, I understood it, but I didn't have enough in me to make the decision that actually. And it was a word. It wasn't necessarily a word that don't pass go. It was more about, hold on, just wait and see what is the. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If he becomes a butterfly, then you step in.
back and allow allow time.
Allow the process.
Because that's the thing with the metamorphosis, is that you have to allow the time for it to develop and to mature. And we always say this to people, you know, before you sign any contract, read the small print. What's the small print? All those little things that you think you're going to change afterwards. The time to change them, you address those is before the contract signed. What's the contract? The wedding contract, right? So it's like if you signed a contract for anything, you're bound to that. And you've said, I accept, I'm happy with everything that's here. And that's what people need to really think about. You know, that's what marriage is. Are you happy?
Get the magnifying glass out.
No, and it's true, because, you know, they're presenting themselves as are you happy with what is being presented? And if you're not, are you happy to deal with that? You know, once you get married, because, you know, once you get married, and then when you get into it as well, you know, I almost felt like, well, this is my lot. That was literally it. This is my lot. This is, you know, so I signed up to this. I settled. I saw what I saw, and I made the decision anyway. And so I've got to deal with this.
But then obviously you spoke about him obviously not, you know, what taking on the role that you in your mind, and that's what we said, the way you were raised, what a man should be and what a husband should be. But then you also had to overcome a lot of infidelity. Do you remember the first time?
Yeah, I remember lots.
How did you? Because a lot of people, you know, when we were growing up, you know, I mean, we were like the waiting to exhale generation. You know, Whitney Houston, and is it what's her name that takes the match and she. Like, what's her name again? Angela Bassett. That scene is like iconic with every woman where she takes all of his clothes.
We're not telling anyone.
She's got that robe on, and she literally, it's like the bad, like, you know, she takes that match and then she walks off, and you just see the. You know, flames, and I think the music starts, and you know, it's like, you know, if your man ever cheats, it's like, you know. But the reality,
There's
The reality
Yeah,
is
back to
very
your-
different.
the
reality is very
that's
different.
not always the case.
It isn't always the case.
But
you
there
s-
is tips, isn't
there
there?
is tips, and
this
even
is-
before
and
we
this
were
is
married,
what a lot of people
yeah.
don't understand today. You know, we talk about things like that all the time. It's like the tip of the iceberg with the Titanic.
Definitely.
There was this little bit of ice poking up above the water's
And they
surface.
thought they would
And this
navigate it.
is like the anchor that he may rant in the traffic. You know, he's driving and he's like "Ugh," blowing his horn
getting
and,
out the car.
and ranting. You know, we had
You
this
know?
guy, he was driving some friends of us, and he started blowing his horn and ranting behind the wheel. We're like, okay, then we're not
They're gonna
use
get
you
you again.
to drive anyone. But most people ignore that that tip.
Yeah.
And the thing that sunk that ship that was supposed to be unsinkable was what was underneath.
Yeah.
And it can appear as insecure, controlling, possessive, and you know some of the things that I've known girls where the guy wants to, you know, take them away from their family, their friends. They'll take you to the other side of the world, and it's all comes under that tip of
Fascination,
iceberg called possessiveness.
Definitely.
So
what
what
was
tips did
your-
you
I
see?
think I saw obviously the infidelity from before. I think when we first
So you
came
saw
to
that
church,
before
I
marriage?
saw that before marriage in terms of, but I saw it before we were saved, and I
Oh,
think
okay.
you know when we came to church, my son Meshach was 2 at the time when I came to church. We were not together. We had broken up at this point because of some of the behaviours.
Okay.
I'd separated. I stayed away. I was single. I got saved. Very soon after I got saved in our church, he started to come to church and
followed you.
he followed me. And so, but the relationship before that, there had already been infidelity within the relationship before that, which is one of the reasons why I separated. And then obviously we got back on track, decided to make a go of it again in church, you know, doing the right thing. We'd already, you know, started a family, etc., etc. When we got married, I think one of the first worries for me is like very soon after we got married, I think he said something about, you know, that he needed to talk to me about something, and he was talking about, you know, having inappropriate conversations with other people. Now, these had taken place before we got married, but he had waited until after we got married to tell me
Whoa.
that this had been happening
Yeah.
and this was a struggle. So it almost came to me like, this is a struggle.
I want your help.
I want your help.
Yeah, and we
Okay.
as rescuers and
Yeah.
heroes.
As
Women,
rescuers and
yeah.
heroes and heroines, we
Yeah.
go in and
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm
I've
not
got you.
happy.
I'm not happy, but I've got
But
you. Yeah.
these are the things that we need
Yeah.
to put in place to ensure that we're not, you know, we're not falling short, and this is how it's going. You know, this is what we need. What do you think we need to do? What help do you think we need? And so on and so forth. So, you know, it was almost presented like, you know what, I'm struggling, help me.
Why do you think he told you though? Was there something that was he maybe was going to come to your attention anyway?
I think eventually the magnitude of what he had shared with me, what he shared with me was quite minute in terms of what came to my attention. And I think even in that came to my attention very publicly. So it was multiple people in church, multiple females that he had been messaging, or they had been exchanging messages. I won't put it all on him, because I do believe that there were people
Yeah, I think that's
who were
important.
just very much willing to engage despite knowing, you
That
know,
he was a married
he's a
man.
married man.
Yeah.
They were very willing. Some were not, some were, you know, but it all kind of transpired, came to light, and so on. So very publicly, I became aware that my husband, you know, was being, at the very least, having inappropriate conversations and text exchanges with other females. And that in itself is just like, what do I do here? Because like, we're in church. It doesn't make any sense. Like,
No.
how is this how
Yeah.
is this
And
happening?
the small community.
You know, we're a
that you've
small
got to live
community.
with.
These
Yeah.
are friends. These are people. We hug each other when we see. Like, I don't understand. You know, and it was a really, really, really difficult. And this was all happening within the first, I'll probably say, the first year,
Oh wow.
year and a half of our marriage.
I think that's one of my girlfriends. She went through something very similar, and I think that's the thing that hurt her the most. That these were people that, you know,
That you
knew
see
us.
every
See
day.
everyone
They
and
knew
you
who
know,
I
like-
was.
I
They
think,
knew
I
who
think
he
as
was.
we've got to-
strangers is
but-
one
Yeah.
thing.
No, but I think we've also got to talk about that for a minute, because I think that, and in no way, shape, or form am I vindicating or saying, you know, that it was ever
Right,
okay.
yeah, of course.
But I think that as women or as a man, there also has to be an accountability on your part, because if you know someone is in a relationship, even dating or engaged or whatever, you've got no business being there.
No.
And I think that
Well,
we
that
put
was
a
my
lot
whole
of
thing
ownership
that was
on
my whole thing with your dad.
Yeah.
I was 16 or something when I met him.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't talk to him for the longest time, not because I thought he was married. I thought he was in a relationship.
Yeah.
I saw him with
Yeah.
a child. I put 2 and 2 together, made 10. You're in a relationship.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even have a conversation with him. He had to find somebody that knew me to
tell you.
find out, why did this woman shut me down? Why is
Yeah.
she not talking to me? That through that friend, I was like, I don't want nothing to do with him. He's in a relationship. I'm a teenager still.
Yeah.
So it was months before he could get hold of me, and only then did I engage in a conversation with him, when I knew he wasn't with someone else.
Yeah.
But then,
you
Dom,
know.
what is that shift in men? Because obviously men are naturally pursuers, you know, and I get it. Like, you know, it's almost like an overnight switch, isn't it? Like, you know, you got to go from like, okay, I've got pick of the pack to
Options,
to now I've got to now
Pick one.
pick
Pick
one
one
and stay
and
with
stay
that
with that
one.
one.
Like
Exactly.
I get it. Like it must not be easy. But what is that
Mm.
thing, Dom, that, and you know, apart from the fact that you know that we'll all literally
Lynch you.
skin you and boil you and torture you if you ever do that to Khadijah. Other than that, what is it that makes you go right now? Like, yeah, she's beautiful. Yep.
Mm.
You
That
gotta
one
remember
look,
your
then-
reasoning of why you made that decision in the first place.
Yeah.
Why did you choose that person? What
Mm.
made them stand out against everyone else you was talking to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you forget that, or you lose value of what that person has, it's like that the whole saying from before that 80-20. You know, the guys can see
Yeah.
her 20%. She's this,
Yeah.
but she ain't dealing with you at home and the
Yeah.
stresses of the kids, and you're looking at it as a whole different scenario,
Yeah.
Yeah.
thinking
You're
like,
looking at a 20-year-old that's never birthed any children.
yeah, it doesn't have any responsibilities,
Mm.
you know, and it's like, you get in that situation long enough, you're gonna be in the same cycle and then looking at someone else.
Yeah.
Like you have to have discipline within yourself, and don't even allow those conversations to begin
To
in the
start.
beginning. Like,
yeah.
but like what you're saying, those conversations happen in church. Like, what's the end result that you're expecting here in terms of not even him, but the people that's
Yeah.
entertaining those
Where's
conversations.
this going?
Yeah.
Firstly, there's people that you know, like, or that know of you, and like, what's the best result that's coming out
Yeah.
of this?
Yeah.
And you know
Right.
the outcome's not going to
Yeah,
be
it's not.
good.
It's
It's,
not gonna
there's
be
nothing good that comes
favourable.
from
So
that.
eventually it's gonna catch up, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you're working
But I
that
think-
same
but
circle.
don't you think that that's what the whole thing is when people are unfaithful? It's where you don't see beyond that moment. It's where you don't take into account. You don't count the cost
Mm.
Yeah.
of what
Whatever
you've
looks
lost.
Some people don't
And
realize
I
until
think
it's too
Maybe
late.
some people
course.
like that edge.
No,
You know, maybe
I think
that's
it's where, like
exciting for some
Dominic, I
people.
think it's what Dominic said, where you don't value what you have now, because I think
Mm.
for the majority of people, the thing that will make them go, "No, I'm good," is because the cost is too high.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
way too high.
Yeah.
It's
But
too
that's
high.
value, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's value. That's why people stay. You know, it's not that once you meet the right person, you're never going to see somebody that's
Of
attractive.
course, but
Yeah.
you don't put yourself in
But you
situations
don't
where
put
that
yourself
can
there
even be
because you
entertaining.
value what you have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because you value what you have, you'll never put that at risk.
Yeah.
And that's
Definitely.
got to be the place that you value so much, that individual that you have, that you are not prepared at any cost or any level to jeopardize.
So
Definitely.
just
Yeah.
left field question, but you said that he'd done this before in some regard or whatever. So were you not like checking his phone, like keeping tabs? 'Cause I know.
A tracker
you know
on
what?
him.
I would
Yeah.
be very suspicious. I don't trust anyone. I
Yeah,
have
no.
a huge issue with
Yeah.
trust, and I would, from the minute I sniffed that, like I'm checking everything because I'm not going to be kept off guard did you ever want to do that? Feel like doing that? Because you said that you found out by him telling you.
Yeah, he told me in the first instance, and then obviously, like I said, everything it just all blew up, and then I came to know a different way, and it was just like I think I was pregnant with our second son at the time, when everything just started to just blow up around me. Thereafter, yeah, absolutely, I checked the phone, but I wasn't a serial like every 5 minutes. I think one of the things that I prayed, and sometimes I think, oh gosh, why did I pray this? But it's an important prayer to pray. It's like, God, just show me if there's anything that is untoward. Show me if there's anything not right in him or what's going on. Do you know what I mean? I needed to know.
That would have been good to pray before.
And
right?
absolutely. And you know, and actually,
Hindsight
you know,
again.
there was a lot of times where I just wouldn't touch his phone. It'd be weeks, it'd be months,
Yeah,
and then I'd have a
I'd be
check,
be
and I'd be looking at it, and then I'll be just like, oh. But that's when you see then you just scroll through and you just say, oh, okay, you know, and what's this, and you can't explain it away, because by the time you've done 2 and 3 and 4 text messages, you're in deep. You know, you're saying what your intentions are,
it's
you're
deep.
showing what you want to do, and you know, and so on. So
That must have been
yeah,
devastating.
It
right?
is. It
That's-
is
that's-
because
that's
you're just
painful.
thinking like, what else how much more do you want me to
Yeah.
Take.
deal with, and
Yeah.
how much more do you want me to take? And it took 9 years of me just, you know, going through different situations, you know, inappropriate messages, but also, you know, inappropriate sexual relationships. And it took 9 years for me to just say, like, Lord, when is enough?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
9. We rate you, but 9 years.
9 years.
That's a long
A
time.
lot of women are gonna be like, "Oh, he
Why?
also
Yeah.
like,
You know,
But I think again, it comes back to what was within me.
that broken.
So,
I- there
okay,
was the-
first
there was the
time,
broken-
yes.
there was the
Second
brokenness
time,
that
third
was in
time,
me.
fourth
There was
time.
the condemnation that was in me. There was almost like, you know,
Probably
what,
an
this
unfair
is
again.
your
Did you
lot.
did you feel unworthy of, as in yourself?
Yeah,
Where was
definitely.
where was your self-esteem?
I
'Cause
think my self-esteem was
Yeah.
really low.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes you
'Cause
see
we
pictures
tend
of
to
these
accept
people and
more.
just thinking, well,
yeah.
what's wrong with
Yeah,
me as to
yeah.
why you're and sometimes we can take it on ourselves, which is not really our issue. And I took a lot. I believe I took a lot on myself that actually, Natalie, it wasn't your issue. You took on what wasn't
His
wrong
issue,
with
yeah.
you.
Yeah.
You made it about you in some regards because you didn't, you know.
But take us behind the
Mhm.
scenes, because for me, I know for me, the thing that I would struggle with the most if my husband was unfaithful is the going back. Because now I've got to kind of get out of my head. I'm very, very visual and I see everything in pictures. So I know for me, I think the hardest thing for me would be, okay, now we've got to almost like reset and go
Yeah.
back. How do you do that? Like, how do you, because I think that for me is the key for anybody that has had anyone that's unfaithful. I think that's the key. I don't think there's a right or
right,
wrong
wrong. No, definitely
whether you
not.
stay or whether you go.
No.
I don't think I could stay.
No.
You wouldn't stay.
No.
But I feel like it's different for
wouldn't say
men.
what?
Yeah.
I
said
feel like
wouldn't
it's
stay.
different for men.
You wouldn't stay.
So
I
if,
couldn't,
if
uh,
Kadisha
Yeah, but-
literally like one time.
What do you mean one time?
No.
It's one time too many.
Yeah, but what
I
if
think
it-
as a man, it's very-
Define. Okay, what if it was like inappropriate text messages? Would you be gone?
You've got to
It
think
depends
about,
on
it.
think about what you have.
Yeah, but that's
But
what it
think
is. That's what
about what
exactly.
you have.
You have
Yeah,
It's-
think by
nearly
that,
4
those
boys.
stages,
Well, it's-
Yeah.
you're kind
No,
of
I
like,
know.
What
you're
would she have to
invested.
do
No,
when
but I
you
know
were like,
Natalie,
That's the
you
thing.
said
If you
9
didn't have,
years.
the thing is, I guarantee you, most people that didn't have kids, they would have been gone a long time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Kids are literally
Yeah.
like that.
They
I'm
are.
calling them
They
like a ball and
definitely
chain,
are.
but
And a
it's
lot of
like,
people say, stay for the kids, but
but it's
actually,
like, how much do I have to
the
take?
kids were part of the reason I decided I can't
Yeah,
stay
yeah,
any
it's-
longer.
Yeah.
they're living
Do you
like
know what I
that,
mean?
yeah.
And I think we separated, I think, twice within that period.
Yeah.
So we were literally living apart because of the
These issues,
behaviors.
yeah.
And when he came back, it was under the hope that, okay, we're reconciling,
changed.
we're putting everything behind us, and we're moving forward. And I think that's quite poignant, because when I say separated, I'm talking months. It wasn't like, you know, he went away and stayed with his mum for 2 weeks. It was a genuine
Break,
six, 8 months
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
period of time.
Mm.
and you say you're working on yourself, I'm working on myself, because I'm not saying, even my responses at times were explosive, because I just got to a stage where I was like, what else? So even I was acting out of, frustrations and angers that were not appropriate. So it's not always like, I can point a finger and said it was you and everything was him. And, even in my responses and my reactions out of my hurt, I was acting out, I was really, really angry. I was really hurt, and, and so.
Which is understandable.
Yeah, it's understandable. Absolutely.
Good reason.
Absolutely.
Did you see the change in him on the second
So
time?
when he came back, for me, I felt that I saw what I wanted. I needed to
enough
see.
of what you wanted.
Yeah.
Enough of what I needed to
And
see
he
to
knew
say,
what you wanted
okay,
to see.
and that's
Yeah.
the thing.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. But you can only peep up for so long.
Yeah,
If
that's the
if
thing.
it's not an
If it's a
innate
facade,
desire
it will
in
show.
you
Yeah.
to change, like you said, Dom, it's about wanting to change when you made that decision. If you're changing for the situation to
Yeah.
get back what
Yeah.
you think belongs
Yeah.
to you,
Mm.
then you can only maintain that for so
Yeah, of
long.
course,
If it's a genuine heart change, it would be the longevity
Yeah,
will
of course,
show.
and you'll see
Do you
it.
know what I mean? And you will see it. And I think that was the thing.
Mm.
Often I felt that it wasn't a genuine heart change. It was, okay, do you know what? I know there is value in my family. I know that's where I want to be. And so I need to do a certain amount of work. But the follow-through and the completion of that work never materialized.
Yeah.
And that's why we kept going around the same
Yeah.
I
same
think
cycles.
I think a lot of times I see this probably in a lot of guys. I mean, women do as well. But it's that mindset to change before you get to the altar, because it's at that place of the altar of exchanging your vows to become a husband and wife. You're leaving something there, singleness, and you're picking up, the responsibility of marriage. And when that doesn't take place, you find that guy still acts like he's a single man, but you're not. You left that.
Absolutely.
When you exchange that vow, you left that there.
Yeah.
Now, you should have been processing that commitment. Yes, you've asked this woman to marry you. She's under the impression, and vice versa. When you say yes to a guy, he's under the impression that you're not going to be going out with your mates every night or every weekend, having sleepover. You've made that decision
Commitment,
that we're going to commit and we're going to change and we're going to leave certain things behind, and it's building that new life that is now with that person. So like when we got married, we started it before we got married. A lot of the friends we hung out with, the company we kept it dropped, and it was, we were together all the time, so we weren't hanging out with our friends. Our whole, where we went, what we did changed, and I'm sure that's the same thing with you. It wasn't like you going off like every weekend with your mates.
And even that our friendship circles did change over time. There's a lot of people that fell off around
I actually
us.
feel like I was the opposite. I was very intentional on keeping my friendships. And maybe it's because I don't
But the
trust
caliber
anyone.
of the friendships.
No,
are
but
there
I
as
had
well.
good friends.
It's
but
not. I'm not
I
saying
think-
to
It's
get
not
rid
like
of
the
the
I'm saying that
friendships.
for me, I actually consciously made that choice. That I was like, because I think I don't trust anyone. I was very conscious of not becoming isolated.
just in case.
Yeah, well, I was
that
like, I
safety
don't want to
net.
build my whole world around you.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if you decide to, I don't know, maybe it was weird and maybe I'm the only one that thinks like that, but I was very conscious of the fact that you could change.
Yeah.
And so for me, I was like, the things I do know, I want to keep.
Hold on.
So I was very conscious of my family and my friends were the things that were non-negotiable. Like,
Well, I'm not saying
No,
you
I-
get rid of that.
I'm
but
saying a
I'm
lot of
saying,
people felt like their characters changed after we got married.
yeah.
yeah,
So
see,
it's like-
I had friends that evolved very naturally and very organically with me and still
But you
are.
weren't running off and doing, going out with your girlfriends there was that change. There was
Yeah,
that,
you're-
there was that
you're-
adaptation that
Yeah.
I'm now somebody's
married
wife.
woman. Yeah.
I'm with this person,
Yeah.
so I have to think about now where I go, and I can't just stay out. I'm accountable now
Yeah.
to somebody, and
Yeah.
it's that
Yeah.
that mindset that has to be grasped,
Yeah.
before we get
Beforehand.
there.
Absolutely.
And the icebergs taken into account. I remember I worked with this lady years ago because there's more than the infidelity stuff to deal with. Her husband was a gambler. So he would take all his money and he would go gamble it. He would take the money for rent, for the house, and gamble it. And she, she made light of it, but it was really a
Really
very
hard,
sad
yeah,
situation because she'd tell us the stories, and she'd say how he'd come home so drunk because he was drinking and gambling was his two vices. And she said he would come home so drunk, he was totally out of it. And she said she would just take the kettle and beat him in his head with it, or she'd take the frying pan. So the next day he'd be like, "What happened to the kettle?" He doesn't know, but she took it out on him in his drunkenness. But then it was just awful. It was just. That was her frustration. She knew she could beat him up while he was drunk, get out her frustration. But then the next day,
that's serious alcohol. You don't know somebody's beating your frying pan.
You're like, that's
she was like the kettle. So she's hitting him hard because the kettle.
Then it's leaking water.
And he would be like, "How did the kettle get
Yeah, but they
dented
didn't have
up?"
bruises.
Not even how's my head look like this.
He probably thought he was in a hangover. He probably thought the reason my head feels like scrambled eggs.
I think the more difficult marriages to walk away from, and I think it's really about the knowing when is that time, when is that point, because yes, there's the big, what I would call the big things like gambling or infidelity or whatever, but there's a lot of people that are just very unhappy in their marriages, and it could be something as small as like they're just bored, or the person's selfish, and I think that's
a whole nother thing, right?
Yeah,
but being married to someone boring.
That's what I'm saying.
Did you know?
Did
you know they were boring?
I think those marriages are really hard to walk away from, because if someone says to you,
someone
"Oh,
boring?
what have they?" No, like if someone's selfish or whatever,
What have they done?
"Oh, what have they done?"
Yeah.
Well, they haven't. They haven't.
It makes
done
you look like
anything,
like
but I think it's that feeling that you feel every day of waking up and not being happy.
Like life's just
And
passing.
and it's
And you're
like
stuck.
a life sentence.
You're stuck with
you're
this
stuck
individual.
with this individual. And I think those are the relationships that are a lot harder to
Yeah.
walk away from,
Yeah.
because it's really about how you feel,
Yeah.
as opposed to even
Something that they're doing or not.
something what they're doing or not doing.
Yeah.
Obviously,
Yeah.
usually it's that they're not being what you.
Yeah.
Thought they would be.
Well, I
thought they
think
were
it's
gonna
harder.
be.
Yes, you've got the addicts. You've got people. Some women are stuck in a relationship with a guy's an addict, or an alcoholic, or a gambler. Those are common
Or
things.
violence.
But being stuck in a relationship. I mean, for me, one of the most frustrating things would be a guy that has no vision and no drive. I remember speaking to this lady one time, and she was living in a council property, and there was all these little creature things that would come out at night. And I remember seeing her one day, and her whole body is covered in this rash. I was like, "Oh my God, are you contagious? Let me know before I come in." And she told me it was these things that come out when you switch off the lights. And so I gave her all the details for the contacts I had, so that she could buy a property and move. And her husband said, "Are you accusing me of not being a good enough provider?"
Yes.
That guilt trip.
Yeah.
It's that guilt trip
Yeah.
because he didn't want to do
Yes,
better.
I am.
And the next time I came back, I'm like, "How did you get on?" And he was in the next room, and she's whispering because she doesn't want to upset him. But she was married to this man that doesn't want to go any further. He's
Doesn't wanna do
happy
anything. Yeah.
with this level. I'm happy to stay in a tower block flat. I've got children, and they can't even go and ride their bike outside. All they got is a little corridor to go up and down in, and he's not even willing to try. And for me, that would be frustrating.
Yeah.
Because you're hindering me, or I'm going to be the one that's going to have to make this happen. And so many women are in that place where if I don't do it,
It's not going to get
it's
done.
not going to get done. And I
Yeah.
think you were experiencing
definitely.
some of that as well.
And I think, when you're dealing with so much I mean, sometimes it's just the basics. You know, if you're constantly battling into basics, how do you have a long-term vision?
Yeah.
Like, there was never any real conversations between us about buying a house, for example. You know, we lived in a rented accommodation. There was never any conversations about it because we couldn't get beyond the basics, like, you know, getting the foundation of the marriage right, you know, committing, saving, you know, not spending money on clothes. And it wasn't me spending money on clothes. It, you know, it would have to be here. Like, so it's just like, I agree with it. It was very, very frustrating not to be able to have a vision. And it almost got to a place where for a long time, I just, well, what's the point in dreaming, in believing, in, you know, wanting to buy this house when, you know, you're trying to do it on your own. And even after the divorce, for a long time, you know, it took a while for my mindset to shift. In the sense that actually, why can't I do it on my own?
That's
And
the
obviously now being in the process where I am doing it on my own. But for a long time, imagine like being in a marriage and we have no joint vision.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense,
Well,
because
that's
you go
another
in and you're
important
thinking like,
factor.
and I think those are the kind of conversations you absolutely have to have beforehand, in the sense that, you know, what are you looking for?
Yeah,
what are
what
you
is your
seeking? What is
vision?
your vision? Where do you see us?
Yeah, because I'm part
And-
of it, right?
Yeah, exactly
So
that.
where
So
are
where
we
are we
going?
going
Where
with
are we
this?
going?
You know,
But don't you think it's quite hard to get married at like 21, and there's such a difference between like a 21-year-old self to a 31-year-old self
definitely.
to a
Yeah, 'cause you know
41-year-old
you-
self
Hopefully
to
you're
a
a bit wiser.
51-year-old self. And I think that where a lot of marriages fall down today is where one keeps on evolving and one stays, because you obviously were attracted to each other. There was something about that person that you wanted, you're forever with that person. And I think that where marriages kind of fall apart is where that person keeps evolving, and if you don't keep on evolving with them, then actually 51-year-old Sarah, for example, isn't attracted to 21-year-old
absolutely.
Like, does that make sense?
Yeah,
And so
100%.
now, can I see forever with this 21-year-old? You know, and
Mentally.
Yeah, just stuck.
and now
Yeah.
that's where, and I think that's
Yeah.
really,
That
really
is a
hard.
really
I
hard
remember, I
thing.
remember seeing men like that. You know, you'd see them on the street and
You think
they're bopping
And
and
you
they've
think-
got a handkerchief out the back pocket, but you look like you're 60. I'm
Yeah.
like, for goodness sake, you know, you're
you look
old now.
Yeah.
You know, there should be, and there is that place where some, you know, this isn't all men, but you get that some of the
They get
men,
stuck on that chapter.
they just get, they just don't want to let go of
I've
the
got-
youth.
yeah, I've got-
Yeah,
I've
no,
got friends
definitely.
that's
You got friends like
Definitely.
that,
They
though.
just don't move
Yeah.
on. Like, you're dressing the same way, you're acting the same
Yeah.
way,
Your
you're doing the same
clothes must
foolishness.
change.
Like, the
How
way you present yourself,
ridiculous.
definitely. I know when I came to church, I look very different to what I do now.
Yeah, but how
Because
ridiculous are
it
you
just doesn't make
in your
sense.
40s
Still want to
and
go
you're
out to
still
the
dressing
club.
like
Still
you're
want to
60?
go out
Yeah.
to the things. It's like
Definitely.
something's got to shift as you get older. I don't know what it is about men. They get stuck in a certain cycle of. I think it's that breaking from that selfishness of your own, or your being in control of every aspect of your life. I think being able to, having to share that, or have someone that you not answer to, but you know you share
You're
your
accountable.
responsibility. Yeah, you're accountable
Yeah.
to. So I think that's, I don't know if it's a fear for men or it's a put off, but that's a part of the next stage of.
But
you
do
know, being
guys
with
say to other guys like, "Come on, man, like we're not 20."
Yeah, but it's like I said
Would
that,
you
but then
say
you,
that?
you
Would you
sound like the
say
guy
that?
that's just got married and you know
Yeah, I think you
just
know it all
No,
now.
yeah,
okay.
I know how you was before, like, you know what I mean. But it's like
And
yeah,
that's
but it's like, you know
interesting.
what, you got to figure it out for yourself, innit?
Yeah.
Because someone could have said that to me, and until I was ready, I had that mind shift. It wouldn't have.
Yeah, but
It would've just
what
went
would
in
you
one ear.
say to the guys that are married, that have made that commitment and are still acting like teenagers?
Yeah, and feeling like they can still play the field.
Not even play the field, like just grow up.
I'd
Yeah.
ask them,
No,
what
that's
made
true.
you
You know,
take
like-
that step in the first place?
Yeah, but
Why would you take a half step instead of actually doing the full commitment? You're already in it. You're already married. You already have someone to accountable. Why not use that person to grow both of you?
Yeah.
It's like, even me, there's certain points like I struggled like with Deesh with like transparency and in terms of like finances, or if I had debts with certain things. And it's like you. I don't know if it's men just think I'll deal with it. I can deal with it by myself. It's like, why not use the person you're married to? That's two minds better than one.
Yeah.
This might not be my strong point. Like,
Yeah.
what do you think? Okay, if I'm trying to do something in terms of a business, what do you think I should do with this? Or how do you think I should, you know, what money can we move about with this? Instead of trying to do it yourself, then there's an issue you haven't told her about or something, and then it's another issue you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Use that person as your, you know, they think as a man you have to be, you know, I don't need to tell you anything, but I'll figure this out. I can.
Yeah.
A lot of men do that.
Yeah, but that's not
though.
what that's what
I don't
marriage
know.
is.
Is that a man's ego thing? Because it's like they want to fix it, and it's even though it's getting worse and worse and worse, but it's like they don't want to share that. I
But
don't know.
It might have been what they've seen as a child and their father. It depends what their background is, but I think a lot of men just aren't open. Even a friend of mine messaged me the other day saying they're going through issues, like, could you help us, like, in terms of like finances, whatever you can. And even us, we're trying to buy another house, and I was like, we don't really have it like right now, but I'll send you whatever I can. And he's like, so many men are telling me like the same thing, like they've gone through things, and it's like men don't have those conversations with each other.
Yeah.
Like,
But I
I'm
think
even
that's
trying to have
really-
a group where you can actually just be transparent, like with each
yeah.
other. It's like everyone's just lost in their minds and
and
trying
not
to deal with things
realizing that
themselves.
they're all going through similar
exactly.
things. But if you share, there's wisdom that
Yeah,
comes out
exactly.
of it. And you know, even like what you were saying with your ex-husband, is that if do you think it would have made a difference if he felt he had people he could open up, other men that he could have opened up to, and would he have listened to them? Do you think that's something that would have helped
I think he
him?
had a decent group of friends
That was with
within
children.
church
Yeah.
that I would say I trusted, you know, to give him sound advice. I don't think any of them would have led him down the wrong path, but I do think there was something about his inability to take it on board and follow through with it.
Yeah,
And I think that's
What
I
do
think
you
that's
think
really
that
key.
stuck was? Because it feels like he's stuck somewhere.
Yeah.
Is this something that happened in his childhood? And this is why, as women and men, that we should gather what I call pertinent information. That means ask questions.
Yeah, but I think a lot of men are not willing to go to counselling, and they're not willing to address. And so
No,
I
but
think
if
a
you're
lot of
dating
men.
somebody,
No, but I
ask
think
the
that
questions.
but I think a lot of men actually like.
They
I'm a
bury things,
huge
yeah.
advocate for counselling and therapy, because I think that there's a lot of men that do experience trauma growing up, and I think, like, I say it to my husband all the time, like, you're operating from your trauma, and he just rolls his eyes at me, but like, but you
You're
are
trying to
I
psychoanalyze
can
him.
see it. No, but I can
Psychologist
see
Sarah.
it. I've done counselling. I can see that you're stuck
Yeah.
as a 16, 17-year-old boy. And I think that men take that as an offence, but
But it's a
Because
place
it's
of
true.
being
It's a place
you.
of being-
You're
yeah.
not
Places of
operating.
being-
Yeah.
You've grown up in the years on paper.
and physically,
then,
but the rest of
physically,
it,
but
There's things that
mentally
return
and
to it.
emotionally and
Coming back
developmentally, like,
yeah,
you're stuck here. And
Yeah.
I think there's so many good men
Yeah.
that, and you know, even with your ex-husband, had he maybe gone and saw a counsellor and dealt with some of the childhood issues of resentment and everything, maybe, just maybe, it might have been a different story. And I think this is for men and women. We're talking a lot about men, but I think for women
for
and
both,
men,
it's
yeah,
both.
absolutely.
I think
definitely.
that many of us actually, like, I actually said that what should be given to people on their wedding days as a wedding present is 5 counselling sessions.
That's a good idea.
That's a good
Like,
idea.
forget
That's
the
great.
vases.
Before.
Forget the
we
vases
do the
and the
before.
whatever.
We do the before because
No,
we
like full on, like therapy. Let's talk about your childhood. Let's talk
talk about
about your
mine, yeah.
childhood.
Yeah.
Because I think the reality is that there's so many of us that go in broken and dysfunctional and whatever.
Do you
Yeah.
remember
And
that
then we
movie?
project
Do you
that.
remember that documentary? I remember you guys being there. We were watching years ago. This lady, she said her friend has like 9 different personalities, so she decided to film her.
I remember
Do
this.
you remember that?
Yeah. I remember.
And well, we knew it was something else. But every point where the 9 different
There's a point of a
personalities came
trauma,
in
of a
Yeah.
were
trauma.
points of trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From a 5-year-old girl. She literally would switch into this voice like a
Yeah.
little 5-year-old
Yeah.
because she had been exposed to deep trauma at that age. And every place she was stuck, were places of trauma. She had
Yeah.
multiple traumas in her growing up, so she was stuck in various places. Now you can imagine a guy comes along and he doesn't do his homework, he's not asked any questions, and then he marries someone like that, and then he's like, what on earth
Yeah.
did I
That's
marry?
Fine, go to
No,
YouTube,
but
mate,
you
I'm
yeah,
like,
you're
out.
s-
But
It is
no, but
crazy,
that's-
Can you
Well,
imagine
it could
you're
be
sitting
like,
there,
Yeah.
little 5-year-old? I mean, from
Do you know
Yeah,
what? I'm
I
just
was
going
like,
to the shop.
what is this?
just talking to you.
I'll leave my shoes, my clothes, I'm
We
gone.
actually saw when she was switching.
Yeah, you see
Yeah,
that.
you
the
saw
We
her
shit.
saw it in her
change,
eyes. We
yeah.
knew. There's a different one coming out,
Yeah.
and we knew it was like something
Yeah. But
possession.
that's an extreme
Yeah.
That was an
version.
extreme.
But
there is
But there is
milder
something
version,
about
yeah.
that
There
in
is.
each
Yeah.
and every one of us to
Yeah.
what we should be looking
Yeah.
out for. You know,
Yeah.
our own trauma.
Somewhere
And then we
you
have
were
to be able to be
rejected.
self-reflective
Yeah.
as well,
Yeah.
and say, actually, am I ready
Mm.
to show somebody this part of me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know that, you know, my
we usually
Natalie
wanna
at, you
cover
know, now
that.
48
Yeah.
versus, you know, when we first start. When I look back, I'm thinking, actually,
Yeah.
you should have dealt with that
Yeah.
before.
Yeah, of course,
Had
yeah.
you dealt with that before, maybe
Yeah.
you may not have been so accepting of
Mm.
that.
Everything else.
Yeah.
You know, and so you know, we always talk about hindsight, but you know, there is something about
Yeah.
being able to self-reflect.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Well, there's a saying that
Yeah.
says you can't say yes until you know what you should say no to.
yeah.
So if you don't know what to say no to, how
Yeah.
can you then know what to say
Say
yes to?
Mm.
Because
Very
if you've
true.
never learned to say
Mm.
no,
Mm.
then how will you learn to say yes? Like you won't
And that is
know.
very true, because even in myself, I knew, like, when I was very much a people pleaser,
Mm.
and that was because of trauma, like growing up in a household where, when I was much younger, where there was domestic violence, and so, you know, constantly my mum and dad fighting,
Mm.
and so everything I did was to please, to keep
To
the
try and
peace.
make it.
Yeah.
Well,
that's
even as a
where that comes
child,
from. You're trying to
you know,
fix
you're
it, be
trying
the one
to
that holds
fix
it
it
and
hold
hold
and
it
keep the
together.
peace.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
mummy's happy, daddy's happy, because, you know, I'm
And
not
it
saying,
wasn't
you
your-
know,
that wasn't
it
your
wasn't my
responsibility.
responsibility.
Yeah.
But I think back now, and I think, actually, I
Mm.
know where it started from.
Yeah.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? But
It's like a therapy
at the
session
time,
right
I'm
now.
telling you, you know, I know where it comes from.
I just saw the light bulb go off. This is what therapy does, guys.
Psychologist.
Yeah,
Sarah.
I know. Thank you.
But
No
yeah,
worries.
you know, when you think about it, you know, we don't pay enough attention to our experiences,
Well,
what
we
we've
don't
had in the
think.
past.
We
We don't
don't-
think
we don't
we don't
actually
think that
think,
that would
how
have such
does-
an impact
yeah.
on how I
Yeah.
respond in the
Yeah.
here and now.
Yeah.
And actually, when I think about it, it was very much about trying to hold things together, even from a young age. Keeping the peace and not letting people get upset
Yeah.
with me, and if you need me to do something, okay, yes, I'll do it. You know, but growing up like that as an adult, there are people who will take advantage
Yeah,
of that part of your
course.
nature.
Of
If you know you're giving nature, you're being
Yeah.
kind, you know,
Yeah.
you know,
exhausting.
you're quite willing to do what. Then there are other people that be like, I like that.
Yeah.
I'll just take advantage of that
Yeah.
person because
Yeah.
that, and I'll
Yeah.
take, and I'll
Yeah.
take, and I'll
Yeah.
take, and I'll take, and I'll
Wow.
take.
Got nothing left to
So
give.
I think that in itself is something. You have to see a person that has been willing to give you something in exchange for what you're giving
Yeah.
Yeah.
giving to them when you're
sure.
starting out in a relationship, for
sure.
sure.
And I think there's a song that you probably would really relate to now that I think about it. I think it's called Never Leave. And it's about a woman that she goes through all these motions or whatever. And then it talks about like giving from an empty cup and
Definitely.
constantly pouring from this empty
Yeah.
cup. And I think really we asked the question, like, you know, when's that moment? Was it when you realised your cup was completely bone dry?
Completely bone dry. I had nothing left to give, really.
Yeah.
I think,
No
you know, there had
fight,
been
nothing.
pockets of moments where you're just like, okay, I just can't do it. But, you know, you're just like, okay, but what's the end result? The end result was divorce. I never married to get divorced.
Yeah.
So we just keep
Yeah.
going.
Yeah.
And then, you know, at the very end, it was just like, you know what,
Was
got
there one
nothing else.
incident or was there one thing where you just were like, nah?
I
Like,
can't
is
accept
it-
that. Yeah,
The
100%.
tipping point.
100%. I
What
think
was
the tipping point
What
was,
was the-
I think it started to build because they began a relationship that literally was a woman at the bottom of our street. Like it was so in your face.
Oh,
Like
wow.
it was just too much. And I
And
think
you never slept it down?
pardon?
You didn't sleep it
I,
down?
do you know what?
Court case still pending,
You know,
so-
honestly, I've said it multiple
Can't my
times.
lawyers say I'm not allowed to talk
My
about it?
salvation
But did
and
she
my
know-
social work degree,
Yeah.
So,
Kept you.
my DBS.
yeah. So she knew about
She knew
you.
who I was.
Oh,
Yeah,
so
no, she knew who I
went-
was.
she
Our
went
children went
into-
to the same school.
Oh.
Like
wow.
you know, like
Yeah,
honestly,
wow.
she 100% knew who I was, and I know.
See,
and,
that's
you know,
why you got to
and
know.
it's those kind of things that I was just like no. But I think that even in that, the last thing, you know, the thing that did it, you know, I had a dream. And I've spoken about the dream before, but I've never really given any detail to the dream. But I had a dream that we were intimate and I caught an STD. That was my dream. And I woke up really afraid and really frightened, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like this is wild. And so, you know, a bit of dodging went on because I was like, yeah, no, I'm not sure. I didn't say anything, but I'm just like, you know what, this is too vivid for me not to pay attention.
Yeah.
And then my guard started to wane a little bit, but then at that point I had another dream and had the same dream again. And then I
You
said,
know,
and I
that's
went
it,
to them and I was
yeah.
like, you know what, I'm not making any accusations. I'm not accusing you or anything, but this is the dream. You know, I dream. You know, God shows me a lot of things in my dreams. This is what I've dreamed. Can we do
Together.
a test
Mm.
together?
Mm.
And he was like, yeah. No problem.
Confidence.
Cool, confidence.
Oh.
You know, and we did this test, and my results came back, and it was I was clear, and I was like, okay, cool, no problem. So you got your results? No results.
Hmm. Now
About
we
2
lied.
days later, got the results. No results.
Now you're hiding.
And then by day 3, I was just like, do you know what? Is there something you need to tell me? And he
Results.
showed me the test, and the test, and he had chlamydia, and so that was it. I was just like, you know what? You're not even prepared to protect your own self.
Wow.
Like you're not
Or
you're
me.
definitely you're not protecting me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And
very
you're not even
selfish,
protecting your own self, and
Wow.
so that I think
Which
was
one's chlamydia?
it's this very highly contagious, very highly infectious,
Wow.
and without a shadow of doubt, if I hadn't listened to the dream, I would have had it too. It's
Wow.
curable,
Yeah.
but lots of medication, etc.,
Not
etc.
ones
So
that
it was
married
just,
men get.
it's just
what?
It's not ones that married men get.
no.
Oh right.
No,
Oh, how do
absolutely
you,
not.
why? Sorry. I'm
because
being rude now.
Because they're married.
It's not one that you accidentally
just-
catch.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You don't catch it through kissing. You don't
Or
catch it
toilet
through
seat.
touching or a toilet seat. Like
Yeah.
you have to be
Yes.
very intentional to have to have caught that.
It's the meaning of it.
Yeah. So I just, you know,
Sarah looks
Sarah's
She's like,
mortified.
experience tequila.
I was like, I don't
So many
know.
questions I'm not gonna ask.
Me too.
Yeah, and so you know,
Yeah, so sweet.
you know, and he had no symptoms. You know, it wasn't something
I
that I
think
would have.
Sarah's asking, is it women with the opposite sex?
It's a sexually
Yeah,
transmitted.
no, yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's a sexual
Okay, let me
transmission.
just-
Men can have it, women can have
Okay,
it.
but why is it just because of the promiscuity that
the
you
amount
get
of
it?
people
No,
You-
it's,
if
it's
you're-
just, it could
somebody
be one
that's-
person that's
that
had
had
it,
it. Yeah.
and it's not. There's
Yeah.
nothing visible about them. In some cases, you can see certain visible.
So the reason why
things.
most married people don't have it is because you know what you
You're
got,
married.
You know
You're
what you got,
married
then
and
you're
you're
married
married
with the
with
same
the
person.
same Unless you come into the marriage
So you would
with
have
an
had to. You
STD,
would have had to
then-
step out on your spouse to be
okay.
able
Yeah.
to contract.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's
And
something
so
you
there's
contract.
nothing that. So for any women out there that's like,
There's no
maybe,
possible way.
or any men that are like,
There's
maybe
no
I think
possible
my
way.
person is
No.
cheating. So do you think that if you think that someone's cheating, that you should ask for the test like you did?
That's not
I mean,
always the case. That
it's
doesn't
not
mean they're
always
not
the case,
cheating if
but
they're
it
cheating.
doesn't. I mean, and then it doesn't show anything. But I think that, you know, my experience is different. I paid attention,
You had a
and you
dream
know,
as well,
and the interesting thing at that time was that everything felt really good.
Mm.
For the first time in a long time,
Oh, wow.
things
Looks
felt
it was
like,
good.
looked like it
Wow.
was heading in the right
And it
direction, and
wasn't.
things were good.
Totally opposite.
And so actually, the total opposite was
Yeah.
happening
Wow.
at that point in time.
Hmm.
It wasn't like we were up in arms and there was such a, like, it been a couple of months and everything looked like it was going well.
So how? Because obviously you said that you guys had separated before. You'd gone away 8 months, come back, whatever. So what made it like forever final? Like,
I mean, trust was a struggle anyway.
yeah,
But for me, I'm like, if a person doesn't have enough about them to take care of themselves and protect their own selves, they could never protect me.
yeah,
They could never take care of me. They could never consider me
yeah,
in what they're doing, because they don't even consider
Well, they weren't
their
anyway.
They weren't anyway.
weren't
But you know, in
considering
that,
you. Because you know, as for
It could have
me,
been worse.
it could have been much
Yeah, it
worse.
could have
though.
been worse,
Much,
because-
much worse.
Did you ever
because
get
for
to
me,
see
it's
it?
like if you've
the test.
And you know, because it was a text message that they sent,
Okay.
so he gave me the text
Okay,
and I
good.
saw it.
But for me, it's like what you do is going to affect me.
100%.
So you have no right to do something that's going to be harmful to me.
Yeah,
Because we're in this together.
yeah.
Everything you do, you can't just be
Affects me.
selfish about
Yeah.
it. And that's the thing with marriage. You can't be selfish because there's always a consequence on the
always,
rest of your family,
always,
you know?
always.
So something like that, it has a direct
Direct on my health, on
Yeah.
On everything,
on
you
your
know, because
life.
because you can
On your
contract
life.
it, and even as a woman, if you don't know that you have it, it could affect your womb. It can
Yeah,
affect so many different parts of.
Yeah.
Especially if you're married, you're not
you know,
thinking.
you're not
if there's no
thinking.
signs
That's
of
the
that,
what.
yeah.
That's the last thing
Mm.
that you expect to have to consider or think about.
Yeah.
So
Is
you
is
wouldn't even
contracting
be
STI. I
checking
wouldn't-
yourself,
No,
and this thing could have been
Yeah, if-
spread.
if
I'm
it
just
wasn't for
thinking,
the
oh, I've got a
dream,
pain. You know,
you
you're just
got it,
thinking,
yeah.
Yeah, you just put it
you
down
just sort of
to
put it down to a
whatever,
pain or
as we
whatever
do,
it
as we
is.
do as women.
100%.
Yeah.
So I think that, you know, that for me, I was just like, you know what, I couldn't look at him in the same way. I couldn't, you know, there was nothing left, everything left
Mm.
on at that point, everything left.
Did he end the relationship?
So
Yeah.
at that point,
No,
at that
did
point, he
end
says
the
that he
other-
wasn't
the
in a
extra-
relationship. I mean, and I think
extracurricular
that's the
affairs?
thing, you know, there's no accountability. You don't take responsibility. You're not transparent. You haven't been honest. And so to me, whether you say you're in one, whether you say you wasn't in one, whether you said it happened from before, to me, it was neither here nor there, because
Yeah.
I can't trust anything that comes out of your mouth now at this
Mm.
point. And
Yeah.
so it was just like, you know what? And that was the point where I said, you know what, God, like, when is enough enough? Like,
Yeah.
I need to be released from this. Like, let me go. I need to go. And
Yeah.
and that was the first time genuinely that I felt a peace about making the decision. A lot of the times when I felt like I wanted to walk away and stuff, it was always, I was in an angry place. I was always in that, and you know, and I've always never wanted to make that decision in anger, in
It's when you're
in
actually
haste.
calm,
You know,
that's
it's
when
when
you
you're
know,
calm, and in
yeah.
that moment,
Yeah.
I was disappointed,
Yeah,
but I
you're
wasn't
rational,
angry. I was
yeah.
just
Yeah.
calm. I was just like, you know what,
Yeah.
Lord,
Mm.
it's enough now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
It's
I
done.
can't. There's nothing else. What
Yeah.
else
You've done the 77
do I?
times.
Am I going to be expected to
Yeah.
forgive? Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
and,
you've
I, and
forgiven.
and at that point, I made the decision.
Well, I think there's a difference between a mistake and a habit, isn't there?
Yes,
And
definitely.
I think that what you're
Definitely a
describing as
habit.
a habit,
yes,
it's habitually you're doing something
Mm.
versus, you know, I've just messed up.
definitely,
I think
It's a
it's very
serial
much-
case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
definitely.
Why do you think that people, just generally everyone, like, why do you think that people, if you're unhappy or you're not fulfilled in a marriage, why do you think people don't just come and say, listen, I want out, rather than go to all the lengths
Because
of
they want to keep both.
Yeah, they want
going
everything.
behind?
want
Yeah, they're
everything.
greedy.
I
They
They
want
want to
personally
be
don't
able
agree
to.
that way. You
They
go
don't
and
want to
meet
let
with someone
go
and come
of
back
that
and, like,
marriage,
just act
but
like
It's 'cause of
they want to be able
things
to
like
still
kids
go with
and-
Yeah,
people that
definitely.
they find attractive.
Definitely, I do think sometimes it is around children, but I think sometimes often what you find is there is a level of selfishness in,
Yeah.
in an individual that I
Always.
just want everything.
Yeah.
I
don't wanna
like
be alone,
I like
but-
being in a home that I know is taken care of, regardless of whether I'm
Yeah.
taking care of it or
Yeah.
not.
Mm.
I don't come home and there's no food. I don't come home and, you know,
Yeah.
I have a need. I don't have a need. So
Mm.
me being here means that there's a level of security. There's a secure base.
Mm.
But I still want to do that. I still want that thing. I
Yeah,
still want to
yeah.
chase, you know, I still like the feeling of chasing. I still like the feeling of whether it's gambling. I still like the feeling of alcohol. I still like the feeling
do-
of that.
do-
And I still want to
I
hold
have
on to that
think
as well.
sometimes is some of this stuff ancestral? Is it hereditary? You know, because
Mm.
sometimes you find that there is that that line where
Promiscuity.
that
Yeah.
promiscuity. Just like alcohol, you find that if the grandfather was an alcoholic, the father is,
Mhm.
the son is. It just
Mm.
seems to pass down. And I've seen that with
Yeah.
with that sexual
Mm.
promiscuity.
Mm.
It's gone down from one generation to the next. makes us think, is that something that's spiritual that's happening there? Because is it something, I don't want to ask that question.
Yeah, no, of course.
Was that
Yeah,
something,
I don't know. I don't know if
because of where
that was
his
us,
father was. But is it something that probably
maybe be beyond his parents? Because I think, like I said, with his parents, I never saw, they were very conscious of their marriage, and they put everything into it, and still married to this day,
it doesn't mean there was
but
never infidelity.
Do you know what I mean? Or even before, like grandfathers and
Yeah.
beyond that, you can sometimes see that line there.
Do you guys think that, like, obviously physical sexual infidelity is obviously bad, but what do you guys think about emotional infidelity? So where they've never done anything physical, but there's text messages or even like just flirting, so there's not necessarily outright, okay, I want to do this to you, I want to do that to you, but literally just someone in your space that shouldn't be there, and you, to the point where you feel like you've got to keep it from your spouse.
Well, we've counseled that before, where a couple were in a marriage and there was that other woman that nothing had happened with, but it was that she's my best friend and I'm not willing to give her up. So that was a session we had where the man wasn't willing to give up his best friend, who was female, even when the wife was putting pressure on him. So there was that friendship, which later on, because he wouldn't give her up, it eventually became a relationship, a full-blown relationship, and he actually left his wife for this friend, this girlfriend, his
Female
best friend,
yeah.
which, so I it's like a serial killer, right? They have all the thoughts and the imaginations about that. They dream, they think about hurting something, whether it's an animal or you listen. If you've ever listened to documentaries, they had the thoughts before,
definitely,
and it was just waiting for an opportunity, because then that thought now becomes a desire. That desire now wants to be fulfilled, and so so there is that process. And even though it starts as a thought, it turns into a desire, and when that desire grows big enough, it now becomes something. I need to fulfill this, and then they look for opportunities. So
I find a lot of men that I speak to, it's like, oh, I don't think that, so they shouldn't have a problem with that. Like, it's very much that mentality, like, I'm never going to do anything, so what's the problem? And I feel like a lot of men have that mindset of,
so they've got a friendship,
and to me they're just a friend, and so it then becomes your issue as the wife because you're being insecure.
Well, in my opinion is, if my husband's uncomfortable with me being in a relationship, friendship, talking relationship with a man, then I need to take that on board. And I need to take that into account, that he doesn't like that. And I need to pull back out of that relationship, because I would expect the same thing from him. If he's in a phone or conversation or relationship, I know where those things go, because webs are forming. The more I talk to you, the more we're building something.
Absolutely.
And eventually, where does that line gets muddled? And this is where things tip into and become something else.
So do you think there's ever an occasion where a guy and a girl can be just friends and be married? Like, so
a married couple be friends. And I think, do you know what?
Not married couple. So
married couple,
one
but
girl
have a
by
friend outside
herself,
of your married.
and then you're married. You've got your
You
wife.
know what?
I think
I
it's
actually don't think.
Dominic,
think
as a
so?
man,
No, because
honestly,
I think
do you
one
think
of
you can have a
them,
female
one
friend?
of them, it may not be both. One of them crosses the line, and the feelings or the reality. I know that movie was, it's just a movie. The one, I think it's Julia Roberts, and she was best friends with a guy. I forget the name of the movie. So he was getting married to Cameron Diaz. And it wasn't until he's like, now in a relationship, she realizes, well, I actually am in love with you. But she had it all the time. There was a girl that that used to come round. We were Christians, we were in church together. she would go evangelism with us. She'd actually come around my house, help me look after the children, everything. And, you know, she would sometimes go evangelism, you know, like that with my husband. And I remember, I think I had Dominic, and I remember she showed up at my house. He was just a few months old. And I remember I was in the kitchen, he was in the little rocker in the kitchen, and she came round and she's like, oh, you know, I need to tell you something, because now she's met somebody else. Like, she said it was God, but it was just her offloading her conscience and making sure she uprooted all her bad deeds. But she came round to say, you know, oh, I've been in love with your husband all these years. I was like, I'm like, God did not tell you to
Come and tell me that.
But
Not while I was cooking.
It's like,
There's knife in my hand.
But she knew me. She was in my house. She was helping me with my children, and yet she'd crossed the line. And they weren't even friends like that. You know, we were friends, but she crossed the line, and she had that going on all these years in her heart. And it wasn't until, okay, now I'm getting married. Now I need to tell you, oh, I've been in love with your husband this whole time. That's why I think one will cross the line. One will cross the line. And you see that with friends sometimes. It's like one falls in love, the other one may not feel that way, but either side, it can be the man or it can be the woman. But I think that you're playing with danger there. Because it's just that, you know, those times, and you don't know what's going on in people's hearts. And you see that so many times where girls, like, they find out their best friend ended up sleeping with their husband, and vice versa. I've seen so many examples over the years. It's just, it's a lot. And I even saw one where it was, the girl he was actually related to her. They were related. So in the wife's mind, she never dreamt that this, you know, she felt she could trust them because they were cousins.
Yeah, that's mad.
And she found, I know that's mad.
It's like Ryan Giggs, though. Do you remember Ryan Giggs? He used to play for Man United.
Yeah.
He was sleeping with his brother's wife for like 11 years or something.
Wow. That's what I'm saying.
It's like, I don't know if it's like that long, but it was a long time they were seeing each other. It's like his brother don't talk to him again.
That's devastating.
Obviously, it came out in the public and stuff.
And then what happened?
I don't think him and his brothers talk anymore. Obviously,
what happened to the wife?
I don't know. Obviously, I just saw the news that it came up like that. But it's the fact that you can, like, if we was like same-sex siblings, like you as my brother or something, that's going on. It's like, how do you even?
Yeah.
Like that long of a period. They've got kids. They have kids in that period. I don't know.
That's crazy. But
that's
a scary world, man.
That proves the point. I mean, it's very rare. So I would never develop a friendship like that with a man. I would never do that, because you can't trust your heart and your flesh. I think, you know, because if you cross over, you drift far enough over there. Now your emotions
if somebody continues down that path, even though their spouse has said, I don't like this, I'm not happy with this, would you classify that as cheating?
Well, to a degree,
you feel like somebody you've put somebody above me then. And I don't think that should ever be the case in a marriage, you know, because at the end of the day, I'm telling you that I'm unhappy, you know, with this situation. I'm not comfortable with this situation. And what you're saying is, though I'm your wife, that is not as important to you as this friendship. So then why am I your wife?
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? Why am I here? If you know why are you married? Marry her then. Do you know what I mean? Because that's the bottom line. You're actually prioritizing another person's thoughts and feelings above mine, and mine's beneath God. Mine should come next. Do you know what I mean? And it would be also interesting to see whether or not that same person would be willing to accept if I had a relationship or a friendship in that way, because chances are they would not be accepting of that kind of level of friendship. But actually your spouse is your priority. No friend outside, nobody else should take the place. And if I'm genuinely, hand on heart, not ranting saying she wants, but I'm genuinely uncomfortable with this situation, then as a husband you should remedy that
and not go undercover.
No, exactly. Not sneak and talk. Look, at the end of the day, day,
Yeah.
you know, and if
Something's-
they're your friends,
something's
they will
wrong.
understand.
Something's
and
wrong.
if
Yeah,
they're not your
exactly.
true
If they
friend,
don't-
then they'll create a situation
Exactly,
about
yeah.
it. But then you would also see their heart as
Yeah.
well, I guess.
And that's what we don't see, because I mean, in my early days of marriage, it was all. I mean, all my well, not all my friends, but some of my friends. There was one time we'd just been married like a few months, and we'd been out, and you know, we came back home, and this girl had been sitting on my doorstep all day, waiting for us to come home. And it was somebody that, given half a chance, she was willing. In fact, I had one that said to my husband when I wasn't there, give me a baby. And so, yeah, so you know, Sarah said she don't trust
let two
nobody.
people know who you live
I
with.
never had no girlfriends because I never trusted them.
Wow.
Because you find that, you know, and this is,
And how would you like
if
me
women
to
are
do it?
honest, you know, okay, let's take it, you know, if women are honest, a lot of the times a woman will watch another woman and they want what they
Yeah,
they have.
see a married man.
They see
what
the
he-
way you treat the woman.
Yeah.
They want that. Then and women get jealous of that, and they will be happy to push you out, and they will go after the guy, especially in the world that we live in today. Women have no problem with that.
And I think I would agree with you, because I think obviously, like, we go back to when we was in the church and he was having inappropriate conversations with people. These are people who knew he was married. He presented himself well. He dressed
So why are
well.
you
He
getting
looked.
going-
He
yeah.
looks the part, and it was almost like, well, is that what made you have those
Yeah,
conversations
yeah.
with him? Because you're seeing this man and thinking, actually, you know, he would be
I
a
think
good
some
husband.
women
for
actually
me.
find it flattering that a man would be willing to risk his marriage for them.
Flattering.
Yeah, I think
I would be
that I
insulted.
think that,
I would
yeah,
be
but it depends
insulted.
on
On
it
your
depends
values.
on what your values
Yeah,
are, and what
yeah,
type
for
of
sure.
woman you are. I think there's
Mm.
some women that actually think, well, that makes me like
You know?
because
Above
he's
your
He's
word.
seen
he's
something
Almost
in
like
me
they've
that he
got
doesn't see
one
in his
up on
wife.
your wife,
Or,
like
you
you're
know?
yeah,
one up, and
absolutely.
then
I get
You've
that.
got that
Yeah.
smug thing of like, I know
Yeah.
something
I get
about your
that.
husband.
I've
that
got
you
power
don't
over you in a
know. Like
sense
I've
as
got
well.
No,
Yeah.
I've
power
got
over
something
you.
that you don't have because
Yeah.
they feel that the
Clearly
husband.
they're
Well,
talking
there was
to
one
me.
woman that was
Attention.
speaking that would speak to my husband that was like a family friend, and so one thing with me is don't call my bluff because I will take it. And he said, you know, if you want to speak to her, you can speak to her. I said, okay. I literally pressed dial, and I said, hi, I'm Sarah Jane, I'm his wife.
Yeah.
And I said, you married a black woman, like you
That's
don't
where you
give a
messed
black
up.
woman your
Don't-
phone.
That was your first mistake.
Yeah, you know, your first mistake.
I will call it.
And then she said to me, she said something that made me switch. It
I
was
will
something
hurt
along
you.
the lines
My
of
flat now.
I'm blah blah blah, like almost like she elevated
herself
herself.
above
Yeah.
who you were.
And I said, sweetheart, I said, when I say that you're nobody, I can't make it any more clear. I said, you will not call my husband, you will not text my husband, you will not message my husband. I said, I don't know how you all do it in Australia, but I will knock your head off your shoulders. And I said, you didn't deal with it, so I had to deal with it.
Yeah.
And I think that, and it was like she almost had formulated this thing that she was higher than what she was.
Yeah.
She had a
And I
priority.
said,
Yeah.
let me bring you all the way back down to where you belong. It's at the bottom.
Yeah.
And I think that and that's when I got the revelation that for some women, they actually see it as like almost like a attainment.
They would do. They would
that
do.
you've now almost like
Yeah.
outranked his wife. You know, and girls, that's not it.
Yeah.
No,
Like
not at
that's
all.
not
That's
it.
nothing to aspire
That's
towards.
not anything to aspire
Not
to.
at
And I
all.
think we've got to break this thing as women where go get your own. Get your own.
Yeah.
Aspire
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah.
Like, don't aspire to someone else.
Yeah.
What a lot of these women don't see is what we as women have to put up with and
They don't-
train.
Exactly.
So you're
Yeah.
seeing the
The
product.
You see what they want you to see.
You're
You're
seeing the
seeing the
product. Well, this is the
facade
thing.
sometimes.
He
He will
work
show you
behind
the
the
side.
scenes.
He'll show you, you know.
But
he'll
at
show
the
you
end of the
nice side.
day, I like what you said. Go get your own. You know,
Yeah.
don't try and take because that's a seed you've sown in your life.
100%.
And don't be surprised when somebody else takes them off of you
100%.
because
Yeah.
if that's something
the
you're
same
going to
thing's gonna happen
do, then
again,
that
yeah.
cycle's going to be what you're going to have for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
But you know, but that's that jealousy, that envy thing that women have.
Yeah.
You know, men have the ego thing, but I think that women's thing
Yeah.
is envy.
Yeah. And
When
the
we see another
insecurity,
woman
yeah.
doing well, she's got the home,
Mm.
she's got the children, she's got the guy, she's got the ring on her finger. Women, you know, I'm not saying that all women, so don't write in, but there are
some.
women that look at that, and they,
Yeah.
instead of going looking for their own, they will look at a guy and they want that, and it is what it is. And I think as women, as wives, I think it's to be aware and not be clueless.
And I think as
And
for-
even
I
when,
think
even
for
if
men,
you think your husband's unattractive
yeah.
to
Somebody, there's
you,
always going to be somebody.
somebody's going
that
to
they're gonna
find
think
him
that
is
is
attractive.
attractive.
the rule should
Somebody's going to
be-
want
There's
him.
someone for
I think the
someone.
rule should be for men and women that there should be nobody on this earth that knows something about your spouse that you don't know,
Yeah.
that
Very
you don't
true.
know.
That's
Yeah.
good.
I think that
That's
should be the
good.
rule. I think if you stuck to that as a
Mm.
rule,
That's good.
your marriage would be good. I think from the
Mhm.
moment that you've equipped someone, you've empowered them then
Mm-hmm.
with a weapon
Yeah.
against your spouse, and I think that that's the part that's
Yeah.
unforgivable,
Yeah.
and I think that that's the
It's
part that is
hurtful.
completely
Yeah.
selfish and
Yeah.
hurtful because
Yeah.
that's the part that I
Yeah.
would be angry with.
Mm.
If my husband ever had an affair, that would be, I know
Mm.
me, that would be the part that made me the most angry because you've given someone power over me that I didn't give you the right to give them.
Yeah.
And I think
100%.
that would be the part that would make me so angry. Listen, I have no issue with if you don't want me anymore,
Yeah.
if you don't want to be in this
Then just
relationship,
go.
whatever,
Then just
go.
go. Do what you
But
need to
don't
do.
Just go and
dare
leave
give
me
someone the
alone.
power
Yeah, go
over
away.
me.
And they will
Leave me
use
alone.
it.
And they will,
They will
use
use
it.
it.
Women are
They will
very
use- they're spiteful.
They will
Yeah.
use
Very,
it.
very, very
They
spiteful.
will want you to know
Yeah.
that they know.
Yeah.
100%, and take pleasure in
Yeah.
telling you. They want the trappings without the
Yeah.
commitment.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, definitely, I would agree with that.
Wow, we've talked about a
I
lot.
know, a lot of stuff.
It's like a whole session. Well, I hope people
Therapy session.
therapy. But I think there's a lot of nuggets in there, and I think there is a lot that we've talked about that if you are in a place where you're not married yet, you're not in a relationship, just listen and take on board some of the stuff that we've shared, the tip of the iceberg, the warning signs. Don't ignore them. And as women, we think we can fix everything. We think, you know, when I marry him, I'm gonna, you know,
This will
to-
change and
yeah,
that'll
this will
change.
change,
Yeah.
and you know that
And
works
vice
both
versa, there's
ways.
Yeah.
men
It
that are
works
very
both
unhappy
ways. I
too.
don't know if you remember that couple, Jessica something. She was married to this guy. It was way back documentary, but she didn't even know what a vacuum cleaner was.
Jessica Simpson.
Jessica Simpson. And you know, they both he had this mindset that I can change her. She didn't even know which end of a vacuum cleaner was what. She, let alone to switch it on. When I say she was clueless, whether I don't know if she was pretending because I don't know anyone that's that clueless, or she just lived this very pampered life.
Yeah.
But you know, he felt he could change her, and they eventually divorced because he couldn't, and he thought he could live with her if he could change her.
Yeah.
And we can't think like that. You have to take notice.
Yeah, don't marry potential.
What advice would you
Yeah.
give?
Yeah.
What advice
what's
would
your
you?
closing wisdom?
Yeah.
I
What
think-
what word of wisdom would you give to anyone listening that's in a relationship? Because it's never too late to call it off, even if you've got the dress and the cake and all
Yeah,
that.
definitely.
Invitations have gone out. It's better to just step back from it. Is there something you can tell?
Take heed of what you see. You know, ask the questions when you see the flags or the concerning things that are coming up for you. Pay attention to them. Don't ignore them, because when you get married, they magnify.
Yeah.
And I like that. Don't marry potential.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that, don't fall in love with the idea of someone.
Yeah.
Um,
good.
and when
Yeah.
someone shows you who they are, believe them as well.
100%.
You know, so.
And do your research, you know, do gather pertinent information,
Definitely.
ask questions, you know, find out what their background, how did your dad treat your mum, how did your mum respect, because those are the things
Yeah.
that they're bringing
Yeah,
into the
definitely.
marriage, because what we, the environment, the culture we were brought up in is what we bring to a marriage. Gather
Definitely.
your information and ask yourself the question, can I live with that?
Yeah.
And you have to honestly ask, can I live with
It's
that?
in its
100%.
unchanged state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I live with
'Cause
an
that's the
angry man?
that's the basic
Can I,
you're gonna
yeah,
say.
can I live with an
Yeah.
angry man? Can I live with an angry woman? because it works both ways.
Definitely.
Can I live with
Definitely.
anger? Can I live with someone talking down to me? You know, it's a serious thing. I think one of the things that was for me was really shocking. Just a quick story. We were actually on a Ryanair flight or something like that, and they never take off on time or whatever. And I remember we went to board, and they said the plane wasn't ready, so we were all ushered back out. And there was the waiting area was ram-packed, and there was this man. He looked in his late 60s, probably 70s, and the wife was sitting at the table. He stood over her like this bully, and he was in her face and shouting at her, and she literally was curled up.
Wow.
And I wanted to like go and tell him about himself. I was like watching him, and I was getting so upset because I just like, you bully. I wanted to go and just like knock him out. And I thought, you know what, she probably would get up and defend him.
Yeah.
But she had so got accustomed to being treated and talked down to
In
like a
that
dog.
way, yeah.
She just, even in public, most of us would have walked away,
Mm-hmm.
got up and walked away because of everybody looking at us. But she sat there, and even when he finished with her, she just sat there like totally curled up within herself. He'd
Wow.
broken her.
Wow.
And, you know, someone might be in a situation where they are in a place where it's just gone so far and they feel broken. I mean, what do we say to them?
you just you have to
Find
you
yourself.
have to find yourself.
Yeah.
You have to find the courage,
Mm.
even in the face, because sometimes it's a scary place to be.
Mm.
It's but you have to find the courage. Speak to somebody that
Yeah.
you can trust, that will give you sound advice. Don't
Mm.
speak to anybody that doesn't have wise counsel.
Yeah.
But speak to somebody who you know is
Mm.
genuinely prepared to
Mm.
hear you but help you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would hope that you would have somebody,
Yeah.
at least one
Yeah.
person, that could offer
Yeah.
that kind of help or support to
And
you to help
marriages,
you to
you
get
should
out.
not feel afraid.
Should
in
never
your
feel-
marriage.
never feel
Never, yeah.
afraid.
Fear is present. Something's wrong.
Yeah, definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
All right. Well,
Thank you,
see you next
guys.
week.
Thank you.
Great episode.
Thank you. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you
Yes.
for
Welcome.
sharing so openly and honestly with us. I know
Yeah.
it's not easy, but thank you.
No
I
problem.
believe that it's just this has been helpful.
Helpful to me
Um,
as well. Sometimes
yeah.
talking things through, and
Yeah.
although there are some people who may have known my story, but I think that whatever can be done to stop somebody from making the same errors,
Mm.
I would always speak about, because it's such a difficult place to
Yeah.
be in. It's not a place that I would wish upon anybody. So
Yeah.
Of course.
no, it was. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.